Call this meeting back to order now that our blood sugar is more regularized, and proceed with Councillor Reimer and her amendment that she is about to move. So I'll move us to an amendment queue. And I'm going to clear the queue and put Councillor Reimer on there. There we go. Yes? Right, but I don't placehold you. You have to put yourself on the queue. I'm not placeholding people. She pushed her button. You didn't push your button. You have to push your button. Councillor Reimer pushed her button first. She's gone the amendment queue first. Yeah. What I said was that we are going to take a break as soon as we're done with discussion and get to amendments. Councillor Reimer was the last person on the queue. She said she had amendments. That's the signal for the break, and she had to push the button for amendments. And you could have done the same thing. So in the future, just push the button when you see the list ending. Put yourself at the bottom of it. That's would have worked with either of you. So on to Councillor Reimer with the amendments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The motion itself, the main motion, items A and B, which were originally submitted, wanted to thank Councillor Affleck for bringing it forward. Because obviously every election has issues, and it bears some analysis of an election to look at what those issues are. I think what has really become obvious through the course of the last couple of months is that some basic information about the routine and regularized process of Vancouver, British Columbia, and indeed all Canadian municipalities is not well understood by even councillors, let alone the public, about who is in charge of what and how a election bylaw and the Vancouver Charter and the Local Government Act and the minister responsible for this and Elections BC and our Chief Elections Officer all interact to provide for a robust, transparent, and appropriate election rules. At the same time, we do have policy goals that we've been pursuing as a City Council. We just discussed one of them, trying to get the province to agree to campaign finance reform. We've had a request to the province for the ability to use proportional voting systems. We've asked them to allow for anonymized balloting data to be made available. We've asked them to conduct an online voting pilot, and then also the Engaged City Task Force recommendations, which were approved by Council, in principle include 5 items related to elections, and then the Healthy City Strategy, which we just passed a couple months ago, also has a targeted increase in voter turnout. So to say that, there's a few things that I would love to see us pursue around the positive things that are happening with elections, and also how we can mobilize on some of these goals in modernizing. So I had 2 amendments that I was suggesting as additions to the motion. The first was to provide analysis on what factors were considered most significant to the 26% increase in voter turnout between the 2011 and 2014 municipal elections. A stunning, that's a very high number in the Western democracy context, and actually a 41% voter increase between 2008 and 2014. So, something to be commended, but also to be understood so that we can improve and increase on it. And then the second part looks at establishing an independent committee that would have a broad mandate to do 3 things: to survey candidates and parties as to their experience in the election. I think we all spoke to some challenges that we had experienced, and hopefully there was positive things as well. And not just those sitting at this table, but all of the folks involved, to review whether the allocation of resources from Council is sufficient to meet the expectations in an election. We keep layering in more goals in terms of voter turnout and other access issues, but we don't actually layer in more money necessarily to go along with those goals. So it'd be good to know from an independent source whether or not that's something we should be considering. And then the third one, close to my heart, is how we take all these policies that we've asked the province for and actually make them a reality. And I'm thinking, as noted by Councillor Affleck, there is a definition of insanity that we around this table have done a lot of thinking and work on those. Perhaps by striking an independent committee, they might have some thinking we haven't thought about in terms of how to advance policies that in general have been unanimously supported by Council, but we have yet to gain the attention of the province on. The last thing I wanted to say on the amendments, I appreciate these are I had intended to bring this forward in the new year in any event, looking at like how we improve towards the 2018 election. It made sense to do it in the context of Councillor Affleck's motion. Having said that, these are fairly significant proposals that I'm putting forward. I think foundational, but also significant and deserve some public chance to respond. So what I will suggest, I will put the amendments in, but then I would also make a motion to refer these amendments, should that be amenable to people, to the next council meeting so that C and D can be discussed.
Okay, so what we have on the floor are amendments and a motion to refer these amendments to, again,
The only motion on the floor is to refer these two items to the next council meeting for discussion and debate.
So that is the motion on the floor. Any further discussion of that motion? Councillor Affleck.
Well, so the motion is a referral motion? I'm confused now because you've got amendments, so you're referring the amendments to the next C and D to the next council meeting. Okay, so that's the act. So
that's what's on the floor.
Shouldn't that be written somewhere? Or
referral motions usually aren't written.
Okay. Is it unusual for the person making the amendments to make the referral too?
You've done it in the past.
Okay. I don't think I've experienced that before. Councillor Boldia.
Just a point of information.
I'm sorry, you weren't on the queue. Did you have a point of order?
Sorry, it's hard to get back and
I know.
from there to there.
Because I have a speaker's queue. Is this something pertinent to?
Point of information.
It is.
Okay.
It's a point of information. I'm just trying to clarify whether, because Councillor Affleck is dealing with what just happened, and
Trying to turn her mic on, I can't.
these are, especially D is going forward. Just to confirm what Councillor Reimer is doing, is she looking at this as a separate motion to come up next, saying, or is she actually referring the entire motion? So that's
No, Councillor Reimer is just referring her C and D, if I understand correctly. Is that correct, Councillor
as
Reimer?
a separate
That's correct.
motion, basically.
Is that correct, Councillor Reimer?
Yes, although I believe given the title of the motion is Review of 2014 Election, and these items specifically refer to that review or to a component of reviewing an election, it seems appropriate that they be part of a motion, not a standalone.
So your intent is to move referral of the entire?
No, just they are part of the motion, but we are referring two pieces of it, which I would advise council we have done on a number of occasions, referred a piece of the motion.
Okay. So we are, no, actually, that people call notice on themselves. It happens. Okay. In the interest of expediency. Excuse me a second. To the clerks. My cue moved and I lost his mic. All right, so what happened to the queue? Okay, there you go.
Good. This is a surprising addition to me. The intent of my motion was really to look back, not to look forward, and that the goal of the information that we would have been provided by staff would have given us the knowledge to be able to be more prescriptive, potentially moving forward. And so I find this, counterintuitive to what the intent of the motion is, at least D. While I respect that it's a referral, which I know that we've apparently done this before. I don't recall it in the last 3 years where a person makes an amendment and refers it themselves. There's a lot in D, and I think that I'm okay with C, but D I don't think I can support because I feel like I need the information from A, B, and C first before I can have an understanding of what D means. So I would have preferred if Councillor Reimer had created that as a separate motion and would have given us time at that time and had the information from the report. At this point, if the report this motion comes forward next council, we may not even have the report yet from staff that I'm asking for, and so I'll be in this quandary where I'm going,
That's what we'll be debating at the next council. What we're debating right now is whether or not you even want to send this to the next council.
that's right. So the problem I have with the referral motion, C and D, and certainly D, is that we haven't received a report back from staff about all the stuff that happened, and how do I, and this will come potentially, D will come to us before we get the staff report that I'm asking for. So I find it backwards, and so I'll support C, but I can't support D as a referral at this point in time. I think it's important that we get the information from staff first, and then it would be, I think, wise for Councillor Reimer to bring that as a separate motion and really focus on that. I think it's got some interesting components, and I would have liked to seen that as a separate motion. But for now, I think it's important that we get the story first, and then we make decisions about moving forward. So I'll support C, but I won't support D in the referral. So if we could sever that, I'd appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. On to Councillor Carr to the referral motion.
Right. Thanks for clarifying that we're only referring C and D, not the whole motion, because I do still have an amendment that's in, that I provided to the clerk. So I don't have a problem with referring either of these. I think they're quite different than, I mean, they're related, the topic is the same, but they're quite different in terms of the information. It'd be interesting to me that she's referring them to the, Councillor Reimer's referring these to the next council meeting. There's no timeline for the rest of the motion, so that is a bit confusing to me that there's a timeline just to two pieces of it. But be that as it may, you know, I would ask for the clerk's input to see if she can provide the two bits of information here, analysis on the factors considered most significant to the increase in voter turnout, as well as recommendations for membership. And if that's not feasible to be done within 2 weeks, I'd like to know from the Chief Elections Officer.
Ms. McKenzie? I can't get that mic on either. We're having a hard time getting microphones to turn on today. Try not to break the screen. It's touch, but some like these timers. Only this is working. I was trying my finger and it doesn't. And I've got warm hands. It's not the temperature for me. Nope, not getting anything. Yeah. You know what? I can get these. If you want to come up to the clerk's desk, I can get these mics on. Or back. No, I can't get those on. Oh wait, it's on. We just got it on. We just got the podium on. Thank you.
Okay? Yep. Alrighty. Excellent. Now, what was the question? No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
So there's,
Okay.
I guess we're just discussing these items as to what you would be, well, anyway, we'll be discussing providing, if we refer these, analysis on what factors were considered most significant to the 26% increase in voter turnout. And actually, I'm just realizing that we'll be discussing doing it, and the report on that will come later. So my question is going to be rephrased to you, which is, would you be prepared to discuss these two items and provide advice to us in 2 weeks' time, knowing the report back is going to come later? But, you know, you will have to be prepared to somebody, and I'm assuming you, will have to be prepared to answer our questions regarding whether we, you know, and provide us advice on setting up an independent committee to do the kinds of things listed in D, and analysis on the increase in voter turnout.
It's my understanding that with respect to D, if it's referred to the next meeting, I would not be coming back with the recommendations at that time. Is that correct? Or the intent is that I come back with the recommendations at that time? That's my understanding as well.
Direction,
So it
yeah.
would be referred to the meeting, and then it would be at a future meeting that I would bring forward recommendations with respect to D.
Okay.
With respect to C, you know, although it's council's prerogative as to whether both are referred to the next meeting, conceivably some analysis can be done as we're looking at A and B. You know, the extent of what can be done with respect to C is that, you know, I can look at some of the hard data. Now the thing being is that with respect to I can look at the things that we did differently and the results. The piece that, in terms of analysis, and with any sort of election turnout review, is the role that the issues or the candidates come to play in turnout. There, I will not be able to provide analysis in that regard.
Well, I was going to say, for clarification.
So what I'm saying is
for clarification to Ms. McKenzie, you would be no more expected to come back with that result than you would to the B above it for clarifying processes and procedures. We don't expect results on the day that we vote on motions.
No, and
It would
all
simply
I'm
be giving
saying is that
direction to
with
staff.
C, it could go with A and B, or it could go with D. If it goes with D, it would just be a referral.
Okay. Right, so it would be direction to you
It would be a direction to me
to
to
in the
eventually come
future
back
do
and-
these things. Okay.
Yes, thank you. My question is really whether you would be prepared within 2 weeks to provide us, council, with a recommendation about
Sorry,
doing.
clarification, when we vote on a motion,
No,
we are
no,
not
can
expecting
I
the
please-
results of that to come forward at that
No,
time.
you have, I'm sorry, but you have predated, or you precluded my continued explanation of the point. I'm not asking for the content here, but whether the Chief Elections Officer can give us insight in 2 weeks' time on the advisability of setting up such a committee to do those kinds of things. Because that's a whole bunch of different things here. That I see the logic of 3 in terms of kind of information relating to A and B, but D is a kind of different kettle of fish. And so I'm just wondering if in thinking, if 2 weeks is sufficient time for you to contemplate whether such a committee and the mandate of it as spelled out there, and all of the things it would be doing, that you could give us advice as to how the feasibility of that, and if that covers off what you would need to.
The city manager has a comment.
Thanks, Madam Chair and Council. I think Council, I don't think it's a fair position to put the city clerk and the chief election officer in. You know, this is a significant amount of thinking that she will have to do, and you know, there will be senior staff in the city that will have to help figure out how it's going to be resourced and move forward. So I don't think that's really a fair question at this point, Councillor Carr. I think Council will have to decide this based on, you know, your own assumptions around this.
Thank you for that comment.
Perhaps I can ask a question of the city manager?
You may. She is a staff member.
Thank you. Then, because if in 2 weeks we're going to be voting on, so we could refer it to another future meeting beyond that, but do you think that if it's not just the chief election officer, but yourself and a number of other staff, would you, between all of you, be able to give us advice on whether we should proceed forward with this, in this wording, in 2 weeks? When we're voting on it, we're going to have to make a decision. Do we have the resources to do this? What does this mean in terms of the context of other work? You know, are those questions going to be reasonably be able to be answered for us in 2 weeks?
Well, I think a couple of things, Council. When a motion comes to the floor of Council, it's something that, you know, often we bring reports, obviously, and we spend a lot of time on them. We have recommendations. When you bring a motion, the debate and discussion that follows on that motion, which is what you're referring, often can end up with a change in the motion, an amendment, clarification of direction, and we don't presume to, interpret exactly what you mean here when the motion is first tabled and referred. We normally, our normal process is to await the discussion, hear what you have to say, get the direction. We've now got it on record, what your overall intent is about this, and it is a time for you to ask us questions and we can provide some clarification, but normally I wouldn't assign staff to deconstruct something like this in advance of it being debated and passed by council. Does that help?
Sure.
Okay, and you are over time. I gave you a little bit of extra time in there. Thank you very much. On to Councillor Ball.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that Councillor Reimer has brought this forward. C is no issue for me, having C included in Councillor Affleck's motion. However, D I find actually does make me want to think about this for some time, and if it came back as a separate motion, that would be fine, or because I think it stands on its own. It's certainly quite a large amount of work here, and it's interesting, but I would like the opportunity to actually think about it and be able to contribute, which at this point I can't. So again, I'm fine with C, or if it would be up to the councillor whether she wants to take both of them together into the future, but I don't think that D relates to Councillor Affleck's motion just dealing with the past election.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Reimer.
I obviously disagree, which is why I brought it forward. On the issue of C, which there seems to be some broad agreement on, technically we could just pass it today, but I do feel strongly about referring it, because if the principle is people should have time to review something, the public should, not just us, then that principle holds true whether or not there's broad consensus here or not in this moment. So that's in regards to referral of C. In regards to D, which seems to, and I appreciate there's a lot of words there, so it may not, and I may not have explained it well in my slowly rising blood sugar state. The independent committee has a broad mandate to do three things. The first is to survey candidates and parties as to their experience, and perhaps I didn't say this, but in the 2014 election. So this is in fact a review of the experience of candidates and parties in the election per the subject matter of Councillor Affleck's motion. It just expands the kind of information that would be part of that review. Two is to review whether the allocation of resources from council is sufficient to meet expectations in an election. I was anticipating there we would specifically, that committee would be looking at the 2014 election per Councillor Affleck's motion as to whether there was an appropriate amount of resources, and that would be the key information. So those two are very squarely located in the review of the 2014 election. In terms of three, to create a plan for advancing previous council directives to staff regarding electoral procedures, and everything on that bullet-pointed list is passed by council. 92% of it is unanimous, so it's, sorry, I made that number up, but I think close to 100% of it was unanimous. So it's just simply to take things that we have previously thought would improve elections. If we're going to do an election review and be informed by the results of that, why wouldn't we also take the things that we previously thought would be useful in improving elections and not include those? It would seem odd to sever those from a discussion of an election review. In any event, I think more than ever after this discussion, I can see the advisability of referral, which is really what we're debating. So I am hoping that I can get support to refer it to the next council meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. So we are now on to the vote on the referral, and I will sever C from D, and we will do this using the voting queue. I need to bring my own version of up here. Call the vote, and this will be for the referral of C. My voting queue is not working. And I, for one, do not have a voting queue coming up on my computer now after I restarted it. So I'll do my own here. I'm doing it, I'm overriding it. Okay, Councillor Stevenson, yours is not registered yet, so we need to. No, I think yours is this cranky one. I think yours is sticky. Yeah. Do you want me to do it for you? Are you in favor? All right, then I will do the vote assist. In favor. There we go. No, that didn't take either. Perhaps the clerk can help. Nope. Nope. Okay. Okay, there we go. And vote. Well, we've got them all in there. Excellent. It appears to be unanimously in favor of referring C. We will now move to a vote on referring D. Well, and are you in favor? Are you, if you don't mind? Oops, call the vote. There we are. Mine's not working either, so I'm having to override my own vote. It says degree of challenge. All right, that's, oh, mine says I haven't voted, but I just did it. Here we are. Okay, so in D passes with Councillors Ball, Affleck, and DeGenova in opposition. And so those two pieces are referred, and we will now go back to the main queue. And Councillor Carr, and are you going to be moving an amendment? All right, then I'm going to move us to amendment queue. And I can advance you, and there you are.
Thank you. I have provided my amendment, which is now incorrectly noted as C. So I guess it's E. Is it up for people? Yeah. So my amendment really follows from the input of the speaker we had here. And I did talk with the Chief Election Officer, our City Clerk, about this. It seems to me that the original motion, as put forward by Councillor Affleck, talked about presenting the list of complaints, public complaints, and providing to us the information on the process, to the information to the public, on the processes and procedures during the election and the role of Elections BC, all of which are interesting and good bits of information, but didn't include the bringing back to Council of the Chief Election Officer's review of the election, including recommendations to improve the processes and procedures. And in my questioning, it was apparent that she is planning on doing that work, and I think it would be very good to have it on a public record so that the public can come and participate in the hearing of that information. And so I've added that in, and the timeline would fit with whatever the timeline of the other information is. I have no timeline specifically allocated to that.
Okay, and just for clarity, the City Clerk / Chief Elections Officer has already stated that she will be doing this?
As part of our regular review for any election, we always go back to look at the previous election and look at the election that just passed and take away from it the lessons that we've learned and look to see what it is that we can improve for the future.
Okay, thank you.
As the councillor had indicated, it could be a timing issue. It's something that we do over a prolonged period of time. It's not within the intent would not have been to do that within the next 2 weeks.
Right.
Okay. Detailed analysis.
I think we can agree with that. Okay. Thank you very much. I'll move this on to Councillor Affleck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, the reason I didn't have this as part of my motion is because I know that you do bring back a report. The intent of my motion was really to specifically point out the many questions, because we did change some things in this last election, and to provide the public with a transparent and open way of answering a lot of the questions that we've heard. Speaking to the City Clerk earlier, and she's saying, well, I have been answering these questions to people when they call, and I think that's great, but I think there may be 100 people who have that question who then go, oh, what's the answer? I don't know where the answer is. So the intent of my motion was really to provide clarity and openness about, to everybody who wants, so we could say to anybody, hey, whatever happened to that issue of, blah, 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 and you go, well, check out this page on the website, it's all there, all the answers are there, and you can see the answers to that question. that was brought up in council. But I'm fine with this amendment. It is what the city clerk does anyway, so it's completely cool. But you know, I think it's required anyway, so I'm fine with it.
Okay. Seeing no other speakers, I'll move us to the vote. Councillor Stevenson, do you want me to vote for you? Okay, and that's in favor? Okay. Okay, Councillor Ball, yours is not registered yet.
Okay,
There you go.
sorry, I keep trying.
No, oops, it bounced you back off again. Now I'm going to vote assist you.
Thank you.
Whoops. I lost Stevenson when I did that. Oh, and vote. You're all there. Perfect. Okay, we have 8 in favor with Councillor DiGenova in opposition, and that passes then. And that means that we are done with the amendments that we're aware of to date. So I will move us back to the main queue. Councillor Carr, you're on the main queue for the motion as amended. Did you want to speak again to that? Okay. Councillor DiGenova to the main motion as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I have to say that, you know, I feel that Councillor Affleck brought forward a very straightforward motion that wasn't too prescriptive in asking staff to sort of come back to us with this information. So that's why I'm, you know, saddened to see it changed so much. However, of course, I will be supporting the main motion, because I feel that there is a need to have transparency and to make sure that we adequately communicate with the public the issues, concerns that were certainly out there in the media. And I know that we've all received emails from concerned citizens regarding the process, confusion, some of our most vulnerable citizens, seniors, people with disabilities who had difficulty voting, people who were waiting at polling stations when they were out of ballots. So I think that there is certainly a need for this, and I thank Councillor Affleck for bringing forward this motion, and I will be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor DiGenova. Next is Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I did decide to go in the queue because, notwithstanding, I think, the discussion we've been having around issues raised by the public and that have been brought forward as issues of concern around the election, I wanted to take a moment to just acknowledge the incredible work of our Chief Elections Officer and our staff that worked on the election and how diligently they solved the problems as they arose. There were some, I think, very stressful moments, I imagine, during especially Election Day. But I really wanted to acknowledge that we have a very fine staff and the leadership provided to that staff by our Chief Elections Officer. And so I think it's important to know there were some changes. And those changes had big hiccups, and I expect that we will be learning from those. But it's just my thanks to the staff for making it through the election.
Thank you very much. Councillor Reimer.
Thanks. Yeah, as mentioned, I had sort of been mulling over a similar, the concept of a review and sort of looking at what we learned, both positive and negative. And how to have that sort of build a bridge over to all these many policies we've been trying to pursue. Most significantly, the one that, the target we can set is increased voter turnout. The tools we need to do that are not, I would argue, many of them aren't in our jurisdiction, which is why there's that long bulleted point list there about requests to the province. Having said that, I had to offer my thanks to you. I mean, it really was, it's been amazing to see the progress being made around election services, and not in a static environment. And as we heard earlier today, there's an extremely complex regulatory environment for municipal government elections, which is substantively different than the standard the province or federal government hold themselves to in terms of oversight. On top of that, Elections BC failed to give us the addresses of almost 1,000 voters living in the Musqueam ban lands until about 3 days before the election. Unbelievable response from our elections office. In fact, I was on a panel in December where, without naming, it was a public panel, but a band manager who had worked in Tsawwassen and now was working with the Musqueam compared and contrasted Delta's response to a similar issue in 2011 in their municipality to our response in 2014, and it was a wide gulf that was identified, and we were definitely on the very positive side of that. And then, of course, you know, within this toolbox that we do have to increase voter turnout, a dogged and determined effort through a variety of mechanisms in a very challenging city. Anyone who's tried to hold an event or have a cultural event here knows how hard it is to find space to do that, let alone for 8 consecutive or full days in November. So all to say that I think there's much to be commended. 26% increase in voter turnout, amazing. 41% over 2 elections, astounding. Like, there are many municipalities and provinces and federal governments going, how is someone doing this in the modern context? I'm not quite sure where Councillor DeGenova's comments were going. I count 4 changed words in this motion from the original, notwithstanding Councillor Carr's amendment to have something done that was already intended to be done. So I hope you're not too sad about it. I think it's a good motion that's become stronger by some clarification about whether you're looking for concerns or the list of everyone who wanted to know where to vote and those kinds of clarifications. I won't break the rules by talking about a motion that is now on referral to next council meeting, but I am looking forward to deepening and expanding the scope of inquiry to what went right as well per the things that we were just discussing.
Thank you, Councillor Reimer. And Councillor Affleck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For clarity, can you scroll up? Is there more below that? I think there is. And I think just want to make sure when we know what we're voting on. Are we voting on A, B, C, D, and A, B, C, D, E? A to C.
And C, sorry, the new C. It's E.
No D, E.
A, B, and E.
Sorry?
A, B, and E. Can you scroll, please?
New C.
We can't see it, so we can see E on the screen.
Yeah, I can scroll down a bit. Nope. Okay, so can you, yes. We're not voting on C and D?
That's correct.
I'm going to just make that clear. We're voting on A,
We're voting on A, B, and E.
D. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure that was clear for me.
Good clarification.
Thank you. So obviously I support my motion, and you never know. After this day, I might lose my mind and do. So I just wanted to thank everybody, and so thank you everybody for the input, and thank you, Madam City Clerk, for being here today to answer these questions, and in the future, many, many questions I think you're going to be answering, and I apologize also in advance of the work that you are now given from this council, but I think it'll be helpful for Vancouverites to have clarity on what happened, and that's the goal here, and that might make your life easier in the future, not harder, so who knows. So thanks again, and let's get this done and get out of here.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Affleck. Councillor Stevenson.
Yeah, I just wanted it duly noted that I'll be voting twice in 2 days for Councillor Affleck's motions.
For the record. Thank you very much. And for myself, yeah, that's right. I will be voting on your behalf in favor of Councillor Affleck's motion. And my own comments to Ms. McKenzie and her entire team and the city manager and all the clerks and everybody who works on this is that it's something that when we were discussing this, it became very apparent is that the reason there were concerns and the reason that there were some glitches is because of the expansion and because of your response to the desire to have more opportunities to vote. So we're the agents of our own success. It's been so successful that the expectations have gone up, and in fact the demand has gone up. And I think that you can't have much worse of a problem or much better of a problem than that you've been so successful that we need to continue to adapt the program to accommodate the increased interest and the fact that people are very, very pleased at having so many advanced polls, as well as the option of voting in any spaces they want to, which created challenges. But it's because we've done so much, you've done so much in response to the desires of the public and the council to expand people's opportunities to vote. So thank you for all of that effort, and we look forward to seeing the next steps. Seeing nobody else on the queue, I will move us to the vote, and I will vote in favor of Councillor Affleck's motion on behalf of Councillor Stevenson. And I have to assist myself, too, because mine's not working either. Oh, we're done. As soon as they all go, I do it before it bounces again. And that is a unanimous It's done. You're in favor. Unanimous support. Thank you very much. That concludes the Standing Committee portion of this meeting, and we will convene a regular councillor. Ms. Deputy Mayor, assuming it's yours. Okay, we will now convene in regular council to deal with the recommendations and actions from today's Standing Committee on Planning, Transportation and Environment meeting. Congratulations on a well-chaired meeting for your first one, Councillor Deal. Madam Clerk, may we have the roll call, please? Is this thing on? Okay.
All council members present except for Councillor Louis and Mayor Robertson. You have quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. We need a motion to adopt the Standing Committee's recommendations. Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries unanimously, and I need a motion to adjourn. Councillor Deal moves, Councillor Ball seconds. Anyone opposed? No. Okay, carried unanimously. This meeting is adjourned.